I always knew it wouldn't stay quiet forever. That house on Sycamore Hill, white paint long peeled away, shutters sagging like tired eyes, was never truly empty. It only slept, the way old things do when the people who remember them stop speaking their names. They called me Evelyn Crowley. To some, just Mama. To others, that widow in the big house. And to my granddaughter, Madeline, who's just arrived with shaking hands and a pair of boots too new for the old floors, I am only a whisper. She doesn't know I'm still here, but I am. The morning Madeline arrived, the wind shifted. I could feel it in the bones of the house, not just creaks or moans, but a kind of sigh. Like the foundation was preparing itself. The crows returned to the trees. The front gate, untouched in years, groaned open as if by invitation. The house had waited long enough. She stands on the porch now, keys in one hand, box in the other. She hesitates not because she's afraid of the house. No. She's afraid of what it might remember. Or worse, what it might help her remember. And still, she steps in. The door doesn't slam. It closes behind her slowly, deliberately, the way it always did for me. I remember the day I locked it for the last time. There was no ceremony, no goodbye. Just my hand on the doorknob, the air thick with regret, and the distant sound of a train that never stopped in our town anymore. I didn't turn around. I knew if I did, I'd stay, and I couldn't risk that. I'd buried too much here. Memories, voices, blood. Now it's Madeline's turn. She walks through the foyer like it's a museum. The furniture covered. The air stale, but charged. Dust motes dance in the sunlight, pouring through the cracked, stained glass window by the stairs. She doesn't know the pattern in that glass is wrong. It was replaced after the fire. We told everyone it was storm damage. But it wasn't the storm that lit the curtains. She opens the kitchen door and pauses. The linoleum is new compared to the rest of the house, but still decades old. The old kettle still hangs from its hook. She doesn't notice the marks on the floor, tiny scrapes from when I dragged a heavy trunk across it one night, long after midnight. That trunk still sits in the crawlspace beneath the stairs. Locked. She'll find it. They always do, eventually. Madeline sleeps in the yellow room tonight. The one I once painted with sunflowers and laughter before the silence took root. I watch her curl under the quilt, the one I stitched after my second miscarriage, trying to feel like I could still make something whole. She doesn't know the embroidery hides a name. My sister's, the one no one dared speak after 1964. We told the town she ran off with a man, that she was wild, rebellious, but I remember what I saw in the mirror the night she vanished. I remember the cold breath on my neck, the scratch under my window, the shadow behind the wallpaper, and I remember what the house whispered when I asked if she was coming back. It said no. Tomorrow, Madeline will find the tapes. I labeled them Evelyn's recipes. A joke I thought would protect me. But it won't stop her. She's always been clever, that girl. Even at 10 years old, she found the attic key no one ever gave her. She opened the locked chest and saw the photograph of my mother, the one where her eyes had been scratched out. She never asked me about it, but she never forgot it either. I wonder what she'll think when she hears my voice on those tapes. Whether she'll cry, whether she'll understand, whether she'll hate me. I recorded them late at night, back when my hands still trembled less. Each one a confession I couldn't bear to write. Tape after tape, I named names. I told the stories no one would believe of seances disguised as dinner parties, of the priest who warned us once and then disappeared, of the day the walls bled. Yes, the walls. She won't believe that part. Not yet. But the house will show her. Eventually. She went to the garden today. She doesn't know the sundial is off by 7 minutes, always has been, ever since the ground shifted after the burial. She ran her fingers across the old stone, unaware of what lies beneath it. The rose bushes have grown wild again, thorns wrapping the old bench where I sat the night your grandfather died. He wasn't buried in the family plot. I burned his letters. She'll find the ashes, hidden in the fireplace flue. They never fully vanished. The house is quieter than usual tonight. It's listening. It knows she's here. And more importantly, it knows who she is. The last of the women. The last of the name. The only one left who might forgive what none of us dared face. But the house won't make it easy. It never has. I hope she doesn't open the door beneath the stairs. Not yet. That's where I hid what couldn't be burned. The cradle. The ribbon. The last recording. It's where I kept the truth. Where I sealed away the name that broke us. Still. I watch her. Still. I love her. Even in death. Even after everything. Because maybe Madeline will do what I couldn't. Maybe she'll say the name out loud. Maybe she'll set us free. She found the first tape by accident. I knew she would. It was tucked behind the false panel in the pantry, the one with the cracked tile where the sugar ants used to gather every June. The tin box was marked Canning Recipes 1965 in my handwriting with a flourish Madeline never saw me use. The kind of handwriting we only bring out when we're trying to look normal. But nothing about those tapes is normal. Not the voice. Not the content. And certainly not the truth I finally had to say aloud. She didn't recognize the player at first. It was an old Sony, dusty, with frayed headphones that smelled faintly of mothballs and cedar. She hesitated before pressing play, but curiosity always ran deep in the Crowley bloodline, even deeper than fear. My voice came through, grainy, distant like it was calling across water. If you're listening to this, it means the house let you stay. I remember when I recorded that. I sat by the window in the yellow room, the curtains drawn tight. I hadn't spoken out loud in almost 3 days. Not since the night the wind carried her name back through the floorboards. I lit a candle and pressed record. And I told the story. Your great-grandmother, Mary Crowley, came here in 1924. She was 19. Already pregnant. Already ashamed. Her husband had died 2 weeks before their wedding car accident, they said. But there were bruises on her throat that never healed. She built this house to forget. But the land never forgets. Especially not land like this. Madeline flinched. She had always believed the family began with strength. That our line was proud, upright. She didn't know it began with a woman fleeing in silence, just like her own mother had. I continued on the tape, steady, tired. Mary had 2 daughters. Me and Josephine. We weren't supposed to talk about the attic. That was the rule. After sundown, no one climbed the 3rd-floor stairs. She said it was dangerous. But Josephine... She was curious. Just like you. She went up there on a dare one night when she was 17. Only one of her shoes came back down. I never could finish that part without my voice cracking. Madeline paused the tape there. I could feel the questions rising in her chest. Who was Josephine? Where did she go? What did Evelyn mean? Only one shoe? She doesn't yet know the attic has 2 doors. One for entering, one for leaving. Only one of them works anymore. When she pressed play again, the next words were quieter. I found her journal a week later. Hidden behind the molding in the yellow room, she wrote about dreams that weren't dreams, about hearing her name whispered through the fireplace, about a voice in the mirror that spoke in reverse. She wrote a name over and over, and then she stopped writing altogether. That name I never spoke on tape. Some things still have power when spoken, but Madeline will find it soon. I left it where it would call to her, carved into the underside of the green wallpaper in the locked sewing room. The one we claimed had mold and kept sealed for health. It wasn't mold. It was memory trying to bloom. That night, she didn't sleep. She sat in the parlor instead, knees pulled to her chest, the tape recorder beside her like a sleeping pet. The fire barely lit, shadows thick and deep. And yet she didn't run. She listened again, and again. On the second tape, I told her more. When I was 20, I buried something beneath the roses. Not a body, but it might as well have been. It was a letter Josephine wrote the night she disappeared. Addressed to whoever dares come after. She warned of a voice. A woman who lived between walls. A door that only opens when someone says yes to the wrong question. I burned the original. But the house. The house remembers every word. Madeline rewound that section 5 times. And that's when the music box in the upstairs hallway started playing. She froze. The one with the glass ballerina, cracked leg, and tune that never quite resolved it hadn't worked since 1987. And yet it played. Soft. Clear. Madeline. The tune spelled her name. The house was responding. The next morning, she returned to the pantry and found the next tape waiting in the open, no longer hidden. It hadn't been there before, but the house wanted her to continue. She listened. Josephine didn't die in that attic, not in the way people think. She was taken. By something we couldn't name because naming it would make it real. I tried to find her. I followed the voice once. It led me to the mirror in the parlor. The same one you're staring into now. It called me by name. But it wasn't my name. It said, "Welcome back, Josephine." I ran. I've been running ever since. Madeline didn't cry, but her hand trembled on the edge of the chair. The mirror across from her remained silent. For now, when she slept again, it was dreamless. But the mirror cracked. Not loudly. Not violently. Just enough to catch the morning sun differently. Like the house was blinking. Like it knew what came next. She stood before it for almost an hour. The parlor mirror. 6 feet tall. Framed in tarnished brass. Older than the house itself. It had survived the fire. The flooding. Even the storm that split the oak tree out front. But it had not survived us. Its surface now bore a single diagonal crack across the upper left quadrant. Fresh. Delicate. Like a vein of ice through a still lake. It hadn't been there before. I know. I used to polish that mirror every Sunday after church, even when no one came to visit. I knew every fleck, every shadowed corner, every smudge I refused to wipe because it hid the face I no longer wished to see. And now it watched her. Madeline stood close enough to see the freckle above her lip twitch when she breathed. She tilted her head, searching for some trick light, distortion, flaw. But it wasn't the mirror that was broken. It was what it reflected. I had warned her. On tape 3, I told her plainly, if the mirror cracks, don't look in too long. Don't speak your name. Don't let it say yours first. But of course, she thought I was being metaphorical. We all do. Until the mirror speaks. She didn't hear words at first. Just music. That same crooked ballerina tune, but slower. Distorted. Playing from nowhere. Or maybe everywhere. The house does that, you see. It doesn't echo. It absorbs. And then she saw her. A girl in the mirror. Not her. Not a trick of angle or light. A girl in a dress from another time, pale green lace collar, dark hair braided down her back. Standing just behind Madeline's left shoulder. Josephine. Madeline is spun around. No one. But in the mirror, she still stood. The girl raised one hand, fingers trembling. Madeline did not. Their movements no longer matched. The house held its breath. So did I. This was it. The threshold, where memory begins to speak. And if you're not careful, becomes a voice of its own. Madeline whispered, not out of fear, but reverence. What do you want? The girl blinked. No sound. Just that slow, impossible music. And then, the girl opened her mouth. And my voice came out. She took my name. She buried it in the wall. Find the sewing room. Cut beneath the window. Then the mirror shimmered, not cracked, but rippling, as if someone had dropped a pebble into it from the other side. The girl vanished. And Madeline stood alone. I wept. Not from fear, no, but from the realization that the house had chosen her, had trusted her, even when I had failed. The sewing room had been sealed for 48 years. Josephine's final project still lay within, an unfinished white dress, pinned on a mannequin without arms. That's where she went to cry when Mother punished her for seeing too much. That's where she wrote the name. Not on paper, but into the wood beneath the window. Madeline broke the seal on the door with a crowbar she found behind the garden shed. The wallpaper crumbled as if the house sighed with relief. When she entered, the air changed. It smelled like lavender, dust, and something faintly metallic like dried blood that had forgotten it used to be red. She found the window and began to cut. I wanted to stop her. I wanted to scream through the walls, through the wires, through the tape spools she carried in her bag, anything to say, "Not yet. You're not ready." But Madeline never waits for permission. She peeled back the plaster, the layers of green paint. And there it was. Not carved, branded, burned into the frame like scripture. Isadora. That name. The one we never spoke. Not even after the funeral. Not even when the crying began in the attic. Isadora Crowley. My mother's twin. Josephine's secret. The woman the family erased from every record. Because she didn't die. She vanished. After the fire. After the mirror shattered for the first time. Madeline traced the letters with her fingertip. And then she said the name aloud. The moment she did, the mirror answered. She didn't see it at first. But I did. From my place in the walls, in the beams, in the bent wood bones of this house, I saw. The air in the parlor grew cold. Not breeze cold. Grave cold. And the light shifted. Not dimmed, but drained. The mirror pulsed. A shape formed. And then, a hand pressed against the inside of the glass. It was not Josephine's Perry Anna. The fingers were longer, thinner. The nails were blackened. The palm bore a sigil, a shape once sewn into the hem of our mother's apron, which I never dared ask about. She's coming back. That night, Madeline didn't sleep. She walked the halls barefoot, listening for creaks that weren't her own. The tapes remained in her pocket. But she didn't press play. She didn't need to. The house was speaking directly now, and she was starting to understand the language. By morning, the mirror had changed again. The crack was gone, but now there was a key taped to the center, wrapped in yellowing silk, tied with a ribbon the color of dried roses. I never saw that key. Not in life. Not in any dream. Which means it didn't belong to me. The house is choosing her path now, and I can only watch, pray, and remember, because whatever that key opens, it wasn't meant to be opened again. There was never supposed to be a second door. When my father built this house in 1927 after Mother's first episode, and after they sealed the old part of the property under brick and vine, the blueprints were meticulous, every corridor accounted for, every window aligned to let light fall a certain way, every door labeled and measured. And yet, there was always a draft behind the linen closet on the second floor. I used to hear it when I was a girl, a cold breath, like the house was sighing. Not loud, just enough to stir the corner of your blanket. To nudge a loose strand of hair across your cheek. I told Mother once. She slapped me so hard my ears rang for a week. Never mention that wall again, she said. And I never did. Until tonight. Madeline found the key wrapped in silk, still warm from the mirror. She held it like it might bite. It didn't, Everest. It pulsed. Not mechanically, but like something alive. A slow, quiet heartbeat in the palm of her hand. She walked. Not by sight, not by reason, but by instinct. And the house, which had remained still for so long, guided her. Boards didn't creak under her weight. Doors opened before she touched them. She was not a guest anymore. She was something else. She opened the closet. The draft kissed her cheek like an old friend. The shelves remained as I left them, half empty, lined with faded towels and old sachets of lavender from the 1950s. But behind the lowest shelf, the panel darker, warped slightly by humidity, waited. Madeline pressed her palm to it. It moved. Behind it was a door. Plain. Iron-banded. Ancient in a way that had no place in a house built in the 20th century. The key slid in without resistance. And when she turned it, the lock didn't click. It sighed. Beyond it, the room should not have existed. A round chamber, impossibly tall, lit by a source unseen. The air smelled like old wax and burnt sugar. The kind of scent you can't place but immediately fear. Mirrors lined the walls. Dozens. Some shattered, others warped, but each of them hummed subtly, like bees dreaming. Madeline stepped inside, and the door vanished behind her. Josephine called it the memory room. She once drew it in her journal, hidden beneath the floorboards of the sewing room. I found it too late. She described mirrors that spoke truths, but not truths you could live with. Madeline walked between the mirrors, her reflections scattered and distorted not just by glass but by time. She saw herself as a child, as an old woman she hadn't become, as someone she didn't recognize but still felt. Then a voice. Low. Female. Behind her. Madeline. She turned. And saw me. Not as I am or was, but as the house remembered me. Rigid. Haunted. Young. But already grieving. My reflection raised a hand and spoke. This is where we lost her. This is where I failed. This is where she opened the door too wide. Madeline leaned closer. Who? She asked, and my reflection, no longer mine, whispered. Isadora. The mirror rippled. The image changed. And what replaced me was not someone, but something. Long black hair, skin like aged parchment, a smile far too wide for any face born in this world. It leaned forward, and in a voice of silk-draped bone it said, You said my name, little one. And so I came. Madeline backed away, but there was no exit. Only mirrors, and now. They began to whisper. Dozens of voices, layered, overlapping. Say the rest, say the rest, say the rest. The whispers weren't echoes. They were names. She heard Josephine, Evelyn, Mary. Even the men, Robert, Thomas, Elijah, all speaking in a hush that made the air tremble. Madeline dropped to her knees. And the floor pulsed beneath her, not with sound but memory. Visions hit her like wind through broken glass. Isadora stitching symbols into a baptism gown. Josephine drawing salt circles in the attic and muttering to shadows. Mother setting fire to an entire journal just to stop one line from being read. And me, Evelyn, standing over a locked cellar door whispering, Forgive me. Forgive me. Forgive me. Madeline wasn't just seeing it. She was absorbing it. The memory was sinking into her bones like cold into a grave. And then, all mirrors shattered but one. It stood at the center of the chamber. Unbroken. Waiting. Madeline rose. Her voice shook, but it was her own. And she said, Crowley. Blood remembers. The mirror smiled. And the second door reopened. But the room gave her something first. A letter. Yellowed. Sealed with wax shaped like a crow's foot. It bore one name, scrawled in ink the color of old wounds. Isadora Crowley. Inside it, just one line. You are not mad. That is the first thing you must know. If this letter found you, then the house has chosen you. And it only chooses the ones who are almost broken, but not yet. The ones who have seen the edge and leaned forward, but never fallen. You are who I was meant to be. My name is Isadora Crowley. I was born on a cold October night in 1899, 5 minutes after my twin sister Mary. She came first always. She was the one people noticed. The one they praised. I was the shadow. The echo. The second heart no one wanted. They say twins are mirrors. But no one asks what happens when one mirror breaks. When we were children, I could hear things the others couldn't. Not voices. Exactly more like remains of words. Like someone had spoken a moment too late, or far too early. Mother called them warnings. Father called them nonsense. Mary? She just smiled and told me to stop listening so hard. But I couldn't, because the house had already chosen me. Sycamore Hill was not built on clean earth. This land had a memory long before we poured the first stone. The trees used to speak in dreams. The wind carried names. No one had written yet. There was something buried beneath the north wall. Something older than God. But far more attentive. I learned its name when I was 12. But I will not write it here. Some things still listen, even through paper. They tried to cure me. Holy water. Salt. Silence. Once, they locked me in the sewing room for 3 days with only a Bible and a candle. I made it through the first night. On the second, I sewed shut my own mouth just to keep the name from slipping out again in my sleep. Mary was the first to betray me. She told them I had started speaking backward in my sleep, that I had scratched sigils onto the mirror in our bedroom, that I had asked the house to open. But I didn't ask. I answered. It was calling to me long before I ever spoke. They planned a ritual. Not the kind they print in books. No, this was older. Crowley blood. Passed down in whispers and bruises. A blood rite meant to cleanse the house by offering me back to it. I agreed. Not because I believed in their ritual, but because I believed in the house. It would not take me. Not yet. Not until I had finished what I was born to begin. That night, they brought me to the parlor. The mirror was different, then whole. Smooth. Waiting. Mary stood beside me. She held the knife. She was crying. Not for me. For herself. Because she knew the house had rejected her. It had always wanted me. And now it would prove it. The first cut missed my skin. The house would not let her strike me. The glass trembled. The walls moaned. The fire went black. And the last thing I remember was the mirror breaking from the inside out. I woke beneath the house. In the space between rooms where time folds. I have not aged since that night. Not in body. Not in memory. I have lived within the second door, watching every daughter who comes after watching them try to seal what cannot be sealed. The debt still stands. The bloodline still owes. And now it falls to you, Madeline. The mirror gave you this letter because the house has chosen you. But choice is not the same as destiny. You must decide. Will you finish what was started? Or become what they tried to bury? If you wish to finish it, you must find the well. It is no longer marked, but it sleeps beneath the east garden, under the roses. You will know it by the scent. Ash. And something like cinnamon, if cinnamon had teeth. Take the mirror shard. Take the ribbon. Take what I left in the sewing room wall. Place them at the mouth of the well. Say the name I never wrote. Say it only once. Say it only if you're ready to never be the same again. They tried to silence me. They tried to bury me in mirrors and myths. But you are still standing. That means you hear it too, don't you? That hum behind your heartbeat? That shadow behind your reflection? That crack in the story they told you about this family? Good. Then maybe this time, the house will not win. End of backings. Isadora Crowley, daughter of the second hour. First of the broken line. I watched her cross the east garden at dawn. The air was damp, heavy with the promise of something ending. She carried the letter in her back pocket, folded into a square, soft from being read too many times. In her left hand was the mirror shard, wrapped in linen from the sewing room. In her right, the ribbon, Isadora's ribbon, now frayed at the edges, but still stained faintly with wine-colored thread that wasn't wine at all. She was calm, too calm. Like a bird who knows the cage door has closed but flies anyway. No one had set foot in the rose garden in 20 years. Not since Robert trimmed the hedges one summer and found a ring buried in the roots of the easternmost bush. A wedding band, impossibly old. Too big for any of our fingers. No initials, only a single engraving inside. Videt omnia. Latin. It sees everything. We never spoke of it again. Some things even whispered, invite return. But Madeline stepped into that garden like she'd always belonged there. And in a way she had. The house had been shaping her for this from the moment she was born. She just didn't know it until now. She found the well by scent, not sight. Isadora's letter was right ash and cinnamon, sharp enough to sting the back of her throat. The roses bent away from her as she walked, as though the garden recognized her and gave her space to move. The well was hidden beneath a circle of stone cracked, blackened around the edges. She brushed aside the moss. There it was. A cast-iron ring welded to a door that had no hinges, no keyhole, just a mark in the center. The same sigil Josephine once painted on her mirror. The one I burned from every photo. The one etched into the spine of the books I was told never to read. Madeline kneeled. She placed the mirror shard in the left corner of the stone circle, the ribbon in the right, and from her coat pocket a slip of paper folded into fourths. Josephine's final drawing. She opened her mouth and said the name. Once, softly, like a prayer she never believed in. The earth responded. Not with thunder, not with shaking, but with memory. The roses around her wilted in an instant, turning black. dry, curling inward like closing hands. The soil hissed. A wind blew from beneath the well, not above. And then, the stones parted. No machine moved them. They simply understood. Beneath them, a stairwell spiraling into darkness, lined with brick older than the house itself. Wet. Breathing. Yes, the walls breathed. Madeline stood and descended. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. I was too proud, too afraid that if I called her back, she might obey, and we would all be damned for it. Because the truth is, we needed her to go. Someone had to finish it. The steps twisted down forever. At the bottom, a chamber, octagonal, lined with portraits. Every woman in our line. Mary. Josephine. Me. Even her mother Claire. All of us caught in oil and brush, staring ahead. Except Isadora. Her frame hung empty. The plaque below it read, "The vessel." The mirror stood in the center of the chamber. Tall. Unbroken. But behind the glass, the room was wrong. Reflections moved slower. Or faster. Or not at all. In one pane, Madeline saw herself aged 80, holding a child. In another, she was ash. She approached it, laid a hand against the surface. Cold. And then she spoke again. Crowley, blood returns. The glass shivered. A ripple. Then a crack. Not a break. Not destruction. An opening. Through the fracture, she saw Isadora. Alive. Whole. Standing in the same red dress from the photo no one ever found. And Isadora smiled. Not cruelly. Not with hunger. But with peace. "You brought it back," she said. "You finished the circle. Now choose. Step through and take my place. Or close it forever. But if you leave it open, it will feed." Madeline looked down. Her reflection shimmered with options. One path led home to a house cleansed but lonely. The other into the mirror. Into memory. She did not hesitate. She pulled the ribbon from her wrist, wrapped it around the shard, and slid it through the mirror. Isadora caught it. Her hands no longer ethereal were real. She looked at Madeline, eyes wet. "Thank you." Then she turned and walked into the darkness behind her. The mirror sealed. The crack healed. And the frame fell to dust. Madeline woke on the garden floor. It was spring again. The roses were blooming. White. Clean. And above her the sky held no shadows. The house was silent. Not in fear. Not in mourning. But in peace. For the first time in 126 years, there is always one room left unopened. Even when every door is counted, every drawer emptied, every secret unearthed still, there remains a final space. The house never tells you where it is. It waits. It listens. And when it decides you are ready, it lets you find it. For me, it came too late. I was already old, brittle, and tired of trying to rewrite the sins my family had stitched into this place. I spent years pretending silence was safety, that if I just never looked behind the curtain, nothing would reach through. But silence does not protect. It preserves. For Madeline, the last room came the morning after the mirror vanished. She awoke on the garden bench, petals in her hair, dirt beneath her nails. Her hands were empty, no ribbon, no shard, no letter. But her body remembered. Her breath had changed. Her eyes had seen beyond time. The house knew. And it opened the door. She didn't need to search for it. She simply walked. Up the stairs. Past the linen closet. Down the west hallway no one ever used. And there, behind a wall that hadn't been there the night before, was a door. Plain white. Unmarked. But humming with a sound she felt in her teeth, not her ears. She opened it. The room was simple. A bed. A desk. A window with curtains blowing in a breeze that could not exist. And on the desk, a box. Wooden. Carved with the Crowley crest. The same one my father wore on his lapel the day he died. Madeline approached. She didn't ask permission. She simply lifted the lid. Inside. Tapes. 7 of them. Labeled not with numbers, but names. Evelyn. Josephine. Mary. Claire. Isadora. Elisa. Madeline. She took the last one, held it in her palm. Her name. in my handwriting, and suddenly, I was beside her again. Not in flesh, but in echo. Because that's what the last room is. Not a prison. Not a shrine. A conversation. One the bloodline never let itself have. I spoke. We never gave you a choice. We only gave you a story and hoped you'd read it correctly. But this time, the ending is yours. Madeline sat at the desk, placed the tape into the recorder that waited beside the box, pressed record, and began to speak. She told the house everything. The letter, the well, the voice in the mirror, the way her heartbeat had changed the moment she said the name aloud. She spoke for 43 minutes, and in that time the house listened. I felt it, the shift, the settling of beams that had groaned for generations, the sigh in the floorboards, the breath in the attic, the silence in the cellar, finally true silence. When she finished, she placed the tape back in the box, and the box closed itself. The wind died, the curtains stilled, and the room faded. Note disappeared. Just withdrawn. Until the next time it is needed. Madeline walked out, down the stairs, through the front door, into the morning sun. She did not turn around. She did not need to. The house no longer held her. It had released her. 3 weeks later, I watched from the window from my room in my way as a moving truck pulled up. She wasn't selling it. She wasn't burning it. She was passing it on. To Michael, the only other Crowley who had ever apologized without being asked. She handed him the keys, said only 2 words. Listen well. He nodded. She kissed his forehead, and walked away. I wanted to cry, but the house did it for me. It rained that night. Softly. Not mourning. Just memory washing clean the walls. There is peace now. Not because all ghosts are gone, but because we know their names. And names remembered do not haunt. They teach.